did their study, there was a lot of interest. The interest shifted to children, to human children. And the question was, when do human children start doing this thing that we all obviously do all the time, thinking about what others believe and desire? And so a task along the lines of this task up here was created. This is called the false belief task. You guys familiar? How many of you have heard of this before? Upload. So here's a little story that's told to young children, like Alexandra back there. 3 and 4-year-olds are told stories. This is Sally, and this is Anne. I don't know if you can read the slide. And then Sally puts her ball into the basket, and Sally goes away. While Sally is away, Anne moves the ball from the basket into the box, and then Anne leaves and Sally comes back. Children 2, 3, and 4 are asked the question, where will Sally go to look for her ball? Now, what do you think? Where should she go? Most of you are older than 4.
The basket.
Zoe, what do you think? Is she going to go look in the basket or in the box?
First in the basket, then.
Good. Yeah, so she's going to go look in the basket. Why? Yeah, Zoe. Because that's where she put it. Yeah, she's great. You're fabulous. Perfect answer. Yeah, so this false belief task found that by age 4, children start saying exactly what Zoe said. She's going to look for it in the basket. And then Zoe's very smart, so she realizes she'll keep looking after she realizes it's not there. But what was interesting is that before children are 4, 3-year-olds will say something like, oh, she's going to look for it in the box. And you're like, that's really weird. Why would you say she's looking for it in the box? And kids will say, well, because that's where it is. Especially when these studies have chocolate, like hidden chocolate. The kids will be like, well, there's chocolate. Wouldn't you go where the chocolate is? Why would you go where there isn't chocolate? That would be silly. That would be ridiculous. So there's this thing that happens to kids between 3 and 4, somewhere in that range, where kids start passing this task. And the way that's been interpreted is that at sometime between 3 and 4, kids start mind reading. Right? The way they solve this task is that Sally realizes, or that the kids realize that Sally believes that her ball is in the basket, and she desires to retrieve her ball, and so she will then move herself to the basket. Whereas younger kids just use a heuristic, like, oh, she's going to go look for the object where it is. Now, one thing you might notice that Zoe said very cleverly, when I asked her why she would go to the basket, she said, because that's where she left it. That's where she left the ball. So it seems like there's another way of solving this task that doesn't require mind reading. There's another heuristic that children might develop when sometime between 3 and 4, namely the heuristic that people look for objects where they left them. Alexandra sees me drop my keys in a certain place and then go back and look for the keys in that place later on. Kids who are exposed to parents leaving objects in a certain place and then seeking them out again and again start to learn this, especially when they move the object. Have you ever done that? You moved your mom's keys and mom's, where are my keys? What have you done? You would never do that. But maybe you would. No. All right, so there's an alternative explanation for how kids solve this puzzle and why we might in fact see a shift between 3 and 4. It's because between 3 and 4, kids are really intelligently paying a lot of attention to their social environment, their social relations, and what people do and what people ought to do. And they're developing generalizations that they use in order to predict what people are going to do based on those norms. So, young children mind read at 4, maybe, or maybe they're doing something else. Then there's been research more recently looking at even younger children. All right, so this is a study by psychologists looking at 15-month-old children, toddlers. And what the toddlers do, what the researchers do is put a toddler in front of an array like this. So they see a human looking at these 2 boxes. You see this funny little object moving from the green box to the yellow box where it sits. And then they hide the human's face, and the object sneakily moves itself back to the green box, and it remains there. Now, what they do after the children watch this array is they then show the child, the human, looking like they move the barrier, and the human either reaches for the green box or the yellow box. And what the researchers found is that 15-month-olds will look longer when the human reaches to the green box, where the object really is, than they look when the human reaches towards the yellow box, where she last saw the object. And that's interpreted by the psychologists as suggesting that even at 15 months old, children are already thinking about the beliefs of humans, of adults, thinking about what others believe, because they're surprised when she reaches for the green box. Why is she surprised? Because she doesn't know that the object's in the green box, so why would she reach towards the green box? Now, there's a puzzle, right, if you accept that interpretation. Why is it that kids at 15 months old can pass this task, but kids don't pass the other Sally Ann task until they're 4? And that's remained unexplained with the mind-reading interpretation of these studies. So there are other sorts of explanations, right? The same heuristic that people look for things where they left them could be used to explain performance on this task as well. But of course, why are kids passing this task earlier than the other one is still a mystery, right? We still don't have that information yet. And even kids a little bit older, 18-month-old children, in an active helping task. Right, so if you have a child who is helping this man hide an object and lock it in a box, and together they lock it in the pink box, and then the man tries to access the object, the child will unlock the pink box and give him the object. But if he goes out of the room after they lock the object in the pink box, and then while he's out of the room, the object is moved to the yellow box, and then he comes back in the room and tries to open the pink box. The child doesn't help him open the pink box. The child opens the yellow box where the object is. Right? And so again, the interpretation is that at 18 months, kids already know that what he really wants is the object, and he believes it's in the wrong place. He's a false belief. Right? And the researchers give this interpretation. They say that, in fact, what the children are doing is that they're imagining the goal of the behavior as if it's in a thought bubble in his head, and that they're attributing these images of what he believes to him in order to predict what he's going to do. But again, the child could be tracking the adult's goal, right? Adult is moving towards object, and then if he's moving the wrong way, and the goal is that the adult moves towards an object, all they have to do is get the adult to move towards the thing that actually is the goal. You don't have to think about someone's beliefs or desires to know what the goal is, right? A goal is something external in the world that someone is directed towards. So I think there's worries about these claims that young children are mind reading, that this data is not consistent, or it's consistent, but it's not certainly definitive that that's what's going on, that that's the explanation. Now, so there's also this question about whether we, adults, are mind reading all the time, the way it's been assumed, right? So some philosophers say things like, well, the reason why you came to this talk today is that you attributed a belief to Andrews, to the speaker. Like, in order for you to realize I was going to be here, you had to think, oh yes, well, okay, Andrews believes that the talk is today, desires to show up to the talk, and that if you hadn't have thought about what I believe and desire, you couldn't predict what I would do. You wouldn't have shown up. You needed to think about my desires to get here. And that seems kind of silly to me. I think you treated me like an ABM machine. This is what happens. This is what's supposed to happen. Speakers are supposed to show up when the advertised time is. Just like the ABM machine is supposed to give me the $100 when I ask it to. I don't have to think about how it works. I don't have to think about why it's doing it. I just know that's the way it works. That's what should happen. Like, if you showed up and no one was here, you'd say, those bad boss people, they're not doing what they ought to do, right? So in these experiments, the psychologists show adults something like the Sally Ann task. And then they record how long it takes the adults to respond to probe questions about the reality, about where the object is, as compared to how long it takes for the adult to respond to a probe question about what the character believes. And what they find is that it takes longer for the subjects to respond to probe questions about belief than about where an object really is. And this suggests that it takes additional processing, additional cognitive processing, in order to generate the belief attribution than it takes to generate this kind of, to describe the situation. So it looks like we might not even be doing mind reading nearly as often as people think. So what about other apes? I told you Primack and Woodruff had this study in 1978 where they claimed that the chimpanzee Sarah had a theory of mind, that she could mind read. And all these people said, oh, that's ridiculous, that's crazy, no way. There are other alternative explanations. So here, this is, I'm sorry about the quality of the slide, but so Sarah was shown videotapes of humans trying to solve tasks like unlock a locked cage door, or light a gas heater. And then she was given an array of photographs that she could choose from in order to figure out, in order to predict what the human would do next. And so the correct answer for the locked cage door would be the key. And the correct answer for turning the heater on would be the lighter, or the wick. And Sarah's really good at this, really good. And Primack and Woodruff said, and so she mind reads. She does what humans do. She thinks about the states of mind. And people said, well,